When it comes to capturing beautiful photos and videos, you'll get so much more bang for your buck by investing in a nice lens over a nice camera. When I first really got into photography and video, I wanted a high-end lens with a low aperture for that buttery depth of field. But I just couldn't justify spending that much when some of the lenses were more expensive than my camera. However, good news for anyone in that position now, we have a really affordable option from Sirui. So let's talk about it and we'll go over some of the downsides. The lens is the Sirui Aurora 35mm f1.4, which Sirui did send out to me to try out. It's a full-frame autofocus lens that follows on from the 85mm Aurora lens. It works on E, L, X, and Z mounts, but let's not go too deep into the nerdy stuff just yet. So why would you even consider this? The market is flooded with 35mm focal lengths, and for good reason. It's an incredibly versatile focal length. You can get nice wide shots to establish the scene, or you can get nice and close to get more detail and impact. The main reason you'd consider the Aurora 35mm is the f1.4 aperture and the price. You'll get a ton of bokeh, especially when you shoot this wide open. Even though you're probably not going to be shooting at f1.4 all the time, it's nice to have that as a creative option. And if you're struggling with low light, this will be a dream for you. I feel unstoppable with this lens, but that is a pretty boring way to look at it. Let's be real. There are plenty of lenses like that. When you look to this thing, how does it make you feel? I've owned a lot of lenses that don't do that much for me. They have a technically nice image, minimal imperfections, and they're just kind of boring. So what's the Aurora like? I swear every time I wanted to go out and try this lens, it's been pouring rain. Where I'm from in Australia, it's either burning hot or bucketing rain in the summer. So I went out anyway and I managed to get a mixture of sunny and overcast footage. For sharpness, you are getting a nice sharp center image with this gradual fall off into softness, which is a very smooth transition. The softness roll off happens between your subject and the background, of course, but also happens from the center of the image to the outer edges. If you increase the aperture, this gets reduced and your image will get a little bit sharper. And I'm probably against the grain when it comes to sharpness. If you think these images aren't that sharp, I do use techniques to slightly blur them for a more vintage look. That's just my artistic choice, but you'll never run into sharpness issues with this lens. But here you can see in some of my images that wide open, only a small portion is focused and the rest fades away as if it were a dream. I love that. What I like about the Aurora the most is the subtle character that you get. I love the way the lens handles bokeh. It looks incredibly beautiful. It kind of has this swirl on the edges of the frame. The shape of the bokeh is soft and pleasant. Some bokeh can actually look really ugly and janky shaped, and the shape can impact and distract from the shot sometimes. Also, because it's an f1.4, you are getting so much more bokeh and background separation than you normally would on a 35mm. So that's a huge bonus if you are a bokeh hunter like me. The lens flares are intense. They will bombard your image, but it gives it such a raw feeling, almost as if the sun is bouncing in your eyes like it was in the moment. Of course, there is a lens hood if you absolutely hate this, but I love the way the light interacts with the glass because it makes the shots feel much more interactive with the environment. In terms of aberration, vignetting, and strange artifacts, there was nothing I really noticed. Personally, I love anamorphic lenses, so I actually add in some RGB splitting and edge blur in my color grade. I didn't do it for all of my shots, so if you do see that in some of my footage, that's not the lens, that's me. I also was using an 82mm variable ND filter, which does add some vignetting. So if you do see that, again, it's not the lens. I've tested this with and without the filter, and there's no vignetting. I took this out for both photos and videos, and I was really happy using it for both applications. Needless to say, the quality is top-notch. I love lenses with a bit of source, a bit of character, and it just hits the right amount without going overboard. I also tend to add a bit of creative flair to my images and sometimes even soften them, so keep that in mind. If you did want to achieve a similar look, I'll be updating my presets and color grade, and I'll leave those in the description once I've done that. I was really hoping for this lens to be absolute perfection. However, it's just not super reliable when it comes to autofocus. To be clear, it works. It's just a little spotty sometimes. You're just not getting that pro level autofocus that you would from like a Sony G Master, but this lens is probably for people who can't justify spending that amount on a G Master. I'll put up some examples. I'm pretty sure I managed to capture some, but occasionally I just noticed my lens hunting for focus, even though I had a subject or I wasn't moving a lot. Slow autofocus can be quite irritating at critical moments when you have like time sensitive shots. So I know this will be a major gripe for some people. Now, it's not like this was happening in every shot I took. I've just shot with a lot of lenses and autofocus isn't really an issue that comes up for me in my workflow. So I thought I should mention it. I will say, if you've ever tried a lens with a low aperture, the focus area is so thin. I was shooting at f1.4 just to stress test this thing and just to test if it would stay locked even with an incredibly narrow depth of field, and it does a pretty good job. I really like the look of this lens. It's an all metal build and it's still lightweight at 490 grams. It's not super compact or anything like that, but it is small and light for the amount of image quality you get. So I'm really happy with the form factor and the build quality here. It has a lockable aperture ring to prevent switching off or into auto aperture mode. There is a toggle for clickless or clickable aperture if you have a preference on the tactile feedback of the dial. The function button is always welcome just because I do like to use it for a focus hold. And the autofocus toggle is a necessity for me as well because I'm always switching to manual control. The focus and aperture dials also have a nice amount of tension. Now, the minimum focus distance is 0.35 meters, which isn't bad, but I'm just used to other lenses which have a smaller distance. So my muscle memory definitely made me exceed this all the time. I also hate that they went with a 62mm front thread instead of the standard 67mm, but I just bought a step-up ring for a couple bucks on Amazon. Now, the Aurora is also dust-proof, dirt, and raindrop resistant. Your boy was getting absolutely drenched some of these shots, and the lens was getting splashed a lot. So far, so good. There has been no issues. There's also a USB-C port to update the firmware on the lens, and overall, the design is good in my opinion. The lens currently costs around $550 USD, which is about like $950 AUD. When you compare this to a Sony G Master lens, it's about half the price. And even when you compare it to some of the other mainstream Pro 35mm lenses, the Sirui tends to undercut them in terms of cost. But it still maintains a very high quality build with all the dials, buttons, and features you see on premium lenses like the G Master. So it's a very attractive price. If you do want 5% off this lens, feel free to use my affiliate code. It supports the channel and gets you a better price. So is the Sirui Aurora 35mm lens actually worth picking up? The 35mm focal length would suit most people because it's so versatile. For me personally, I definitely do miss larger focal lengths for more compression, so I'm not too close to my subject sometimes. To be fair, this lens has been firmly glued to my camera. You really get a nice sharp yet soft image. The bokeh is really nice. It has a bit of charm. The lens flares can be a bit intense. It has a premium yet light construction. It's not radically cheap or anything like that. It just beats a lot of the existing options and gives you high image quality and bang for your buck. So if you did want to invest a little bit more in a lens, I don't think you'll be disappointed with this. Just know that autofocus will be an issue at times, but for the image quality and low light that you're getting, I will take it.